Hello, wonderful students. This is Module 3, Part 2. I want to make sure you know we're having Zoom open hours Monday, 6 to 10. You go here. That's the link. I should be right here and waiting for you. If you have any old materials that have not gone through resubmission process, talk to me about them. Let's get these cleared up. Let's have a conversation about what you need to get those full points, because that is my goal, is for you to have full points and understand the material. That's where I'd like to be. So we're going to go here to Part 2. What is Module 3, Part 2 about? Well, primarily, we're going to be going over secondary sources, primary sources, and the emphasis probably on primary, as you'll probably be seeing that now or soon in some of your research homework from other courses. I'm going to talk about newspapers and digital media, but not to the degree I would love to. There are so many things out there about fake news. This is not going to be that particular talk. We're going to talk about newspapers as research now and archive newspapers, kind of go over the understanding of what journalists try to do, their set of ethics, what newspapers look like, the anatomy, and also we're not going to talk about social media. I'm going to take that out. I moved that to 6, and I think you're going to enjoy that because Module 6 has nothing but discussion posts and sharing. And hopefully we'll get to kind of talk to each other. So as you go in, the first thing I'm going to talk about will be primary sources. This is very brief and very good. This also is brief and good. I'd like you to understand primary sources from the point of view of two different disciplines, sort of a business one and also a history one. So that would be very enriching for you to know these things. I have a list of things that make up primary sources. This is actually one of the #1 questions we get on Ask a Librarian. What are they? I'm hoping after this, you totally got it. I'm also going to give you some great places to go to look at them. Archives.gov, the Library of Congress.gov. If you use these for your project, that'll cover up one of your .gov government documents sections you need for one of your 8 resources. But it's also something you may be able to use in what you're working on right now. The Library of Congress has some miraculous things, including diaries. And yes, diaries are primary sources. And some of our database very specifically are primary sources. We have a women's magazine archive. Let me tell you about that. It has the actual images of magazines back in the 50s, 60s. It has the articles. It has the advertisements. It has the whole thing. It doesn't have a replication of them. It doesn't have an article about them. It is the real deal. That is a primary source. The African American History database and the American Indian History database both have primary sources. We have a vendor called Infobase, and Infobase specifically has a link that says primary sources. So when you're working in history, look for those Infobase databases. All you have to do is go to databases A to Z and look for vendors, and you'll find it. Also look in the history section. You should be able to locate these quite easily. Other places that we have, EHREF, World Cultures and Architecture. Sometimes these are used in anthropology. These have a great deal of primary and secondary resources, but they're very rich in the primary sources as well. This is going to talk about secondary sources, and we have the most confusing thing in the world, an annotated diary, and we go through the parts, like what makes it secondary and primary and what parts are. But in the end of it all, an annotated diary, despite a diary inherently being a primary source, the annotations makes it a secondary one. How do you like that? Confusing. Also, look at this. These are statistics. These are raw data. They don't tell you what they mean. They don't tell you how to use them. They don't put any sort of wrapper around it. Statistics in this form, absolutely a primary source. Now, what is this? This actually uses a very similar graph, but it also uses an interview. Interviews inherently are a primary source. Data, a primary source, but this takes them all together and it connects them. It has transitional statements. It connects the ideas. It draws conclusions. It also tries to be objective, but that is A beautiful, by the way, because I could find all the pieces, but it is a beautiful secondary source. So review those, click on them, kind of go over them, and you'll get a feel for those things. And then we'll go into a little quiz on whether or not you understand the differences. I am not going to try to trick you. Finally, we're going to go into the next section. You're going to be using these pieces for your annotation assignment this week. Newspapers. Like I told you, I want to go off on like several modules and a lifetime of stories on newspapers. But right now, I am not looking as a fake news or topical type thing. We're looking at them as research objects on what they are, where they are, and more importantly, I want you to see how you may differentiate them from other things you find. Naturally, if you go into a newspaper database, you know it's a newspaper. But what if it looks like this? How do you tell? And if you go through the section, read the different pieces, look at this, compare it, you will see clearly what would make this a blog and not a newspaper article. I also talk about the anatomy of a newspaper. You can go through and give them a look if you want to, but in a way you'll see from the New York Times to the Spokesman Review to the Columbia Basin Herald, they do have some very specific sections. News, sports, entertainment, opinion, those are probably the major pieces of every newspaper. So if you see something sectioned off like that, it may not be a blog, it may be a newspaper. So have a look at those. Now, there's so many really beautiful things you have access to with historical newspapers. Maybe not with this topic unless you're looking for things on what? Yes, the pandemic from last century or other ones. You're going to find those newspaper articles if you go and do a search, say it in Library of Congress or archives.gov. Give these a look, kind of look at them. There's a very interesting thing. Actually, I sort of went down the deep rabbit research hole looking for Moses Lake and these odd pieces. And it's really kind of quirky how you found them. And also some gossip, much gossip about the area from a couple centuries back. So very interesting stuff. So when you're looking for newspapers, I would like to recommend Google newspapers. Yes, you can go to it directly or select it off the search bar. But for this particular piece, I want you to use Newsbank. But I'd like you to know the library has also older versions of the New York Times as well. So I'm going to kind of go down here, go to next. From here, I want you to answer these questions. This is not a quiz. There's no right or wrong answer. I just want you to think about it and write me a little piece at the end. And it's kind of a survey. And if you kind of look at it in a way, it's a mixed method piece. It has closed-ended questions and an open-ended question. I hope you guys get that now, hopefully. So it has a really big open-ended piece at the end. Qualitative method. So then we're going to podcast and videos. I'm going to go over this quite a bit in the demos, but I want you to understand why one podcast or video may be better than another. So when you're looking for a quality podcast, you really want to know who is putting it together. Are they credible? And a lot of ways we can determine this right now, because these pieces of information are ever changing. Do they have show notes? Are they attached to a place where you can find other information? Can you find a transcript? If they mention resources in the piece, those will be the podcasts who have a greater standard of evidence. The same for a video. Who has created it? Do we know when it was created? Do you know who these people are attached to? Where is this video posted or listed? Is it actually placed inside of a website as part of an ongoing information campaign? What is the story behind this video? Now, you can go and I give you a demonstration on how to find both of these, and I talk about some of those pieces that you're looking for, because much like the other things, we're looking for those citation elements. And if those citation elements cannot be found, does this need to be something in your research? That's a very big question. If you can't find the date when something was published, if you can't find the person that's responsible, if you can't find the title and other identifying information, this may not be a great source. You may need to let it go and move to something that has all the pieces, the professional items, a large amount of transparency, credibility, and authority. Look for those pieces. You can find many podcasts and many videos, but you need to find substantive and useful ones that have a great deal of credibility. So read through these pieces, and I include a piece on images as well. I do want you to know, and we're not going over it in great depth in this particular course, but Google Images are not free for you to use. They are generally copyrighted, and they can involve you with a great deal of trouble, money, ethical issues, and loss. I personally ask that you go to look at other things. There's actually places in the images that may let you find things that are free to use, but I advise students always, if possible, use unsplash.com where it's free to use, even if you're using it to make money. It's a beautiful place. Go look at it. Next, I'm going to give you a demo of how to search Newsbank. Please take a look at it. I give you some excellent tips. And these tips carry over into all the other courses you'll be taking. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about journal articles and their construction and how we can mine that for research. Also, I'm going to go into great detail about hunting for podcasts and videos. You will see me toss a few away. That's right. Sometimes in research, you walk away from very poor things. And it's okay. You're looking for the best, not everything that's available. And finally, we will have the annotation project. Yes, I want more keywords because as it turns out, that's really popular. And actually, it's really one of the top things when people can't find something in the databases. If it's not the database itself being poor for that topic, it's the words used. And actually, I spent a lot of time today working on that. Somebody was doing a project on whether or not people with tattoos, healthcare workers with tattoos, if they suffered professionally for having those things. As it turns out, tattoo can be tattoos, so we can truncate it, which we'll be going on to further, and find more things. Also, it is called body art. Also, you can break it down further and call it piercings or other types of things that may be a physical body modification, also a cool phrase for it. And we're able to find so many more articles when we kind of brought it down to little pieces and also looked at the larger phrases for it. So this keyword research I'm trying to have you do every week is actually one of the most important pieces possibly of this entire course. You're going to go to find a newspaper article using Newsbank. I have a video for that. You're going to locate a podcast or a video that's relevant and substantive to your research question. If you can't fill out a significant number of these, it's not going to have a digital object identifier. It may have a website section, but nothing else. But if you can't find the date published or a title or the authors who's responsible, you may not want to use it. These are the important parts of this. These may be not available all the way down, and that's okay. I just want you to understand the order, the significance, and what this means is when you go to your reference, while the references for the scholarly articles are going to contain all this information, your references for these may actually only have 3 to 4 pieces to them, which is probably going to look really exciting to you when you get to that. And finally, I want you to explain the differences between the article you found that's a newspaper article and also a podcast. How do they present the information? Did they provide credit to anyone? Give me some details about how the podcast did it and how the newspaper article did it. And that will complete Module 3, Part 2. It's a really quick romp over some very important topics, and my decision-making process in this is what you would probably use the most immediately and some key information about Newsbank, for instance, that's going to help you going forward. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Monday nights, I'm sitting here waiting for your questions. I can't wait to help you. I love talking about this stuff. I love it, and I'd love to talk about it with you. So, reach out to me if you need to do so.